Welcome to eBible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. And now, here's Chris McCann.
Good evening and welcome to eBible Fellowship's Bible study in the book of Genesis. Tonight is study number 5 in Genesis chapter 35, and we'll begin reading in verse 4. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. And I'll stop reading there. In our last study, we were looking at the word that was translated as put away in Genesis 35:2, put away the strange gods that are among you. And one of the places we went to was in Joshua 24. So I'm going to go over there again. Joshua 24, and in Joshua 24, beginning in verse 20, it says, If ye forsake Jehovah and serve strange gods, then he will turn and do you hurt, and consume you after that he has done you good. And the people said unto Joshua, Nay, but we will serve Jehovah. And Joshua said unto the people, Ye are witnesses against yourselves that ye have chosen you Jehovah to serve him. And they said, We are witnesses. Now therefore put away, and that's the same Hebrew word. It's Strong's number 5493 that was in Genesis 35 verse 2. Now therefore put away, said he, the strange gods which are among you, and incline your heart unto Jehovah God of Israel. Okay, so I'll just stop here a second. We see the same statement, put away the strange gods which are among you, and incline your heart unto Jehovah God of Israel. Now this is being said to all Israel. Joshua had gathered all Israel to hear this address, to hear these words, just as Jacob had gathered his whole household. Back in Genesis 35, in verse 2, Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you. So once again, just as all of Jacob's household would have been all Israel at that time, much smaller than the Israel that came out of Egypt and now had conquered the land of Canaan under Joshua, but still all Israel is being told by the word of God to put away the strange gods which are among you. And the other side of that would be incline your heart unto Jehovah God of Israel. Well, it continues in verse 24, And the people said unto Joshua, Jehovah our God will we serve, and his voice will we obey. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem, just as what is happening in Genesis 35 in these early verses is taking place by Shechem, the oak where they place the strange gods. In verse 4, at the end of verse 4, Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. So that's a second tie-in to Joshua 24. And it continues in verse 25. Joshua made a covenant with the people that day and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God and took a great stone and set it up there under an oak that was by the sanctuary of Jehovah. And that would be the additional connection. Jacob is placing the strange gods and the earrings under the oak, which is by Shechem. And here They are in Shechem, and they're told, put away the strange gods. Joshua writes the words in the book of the law, and he took a great stone and set it up there under an oak that was by the sanctuary of Jehovah. And Joshua said unto all the people, Behold, this stone shall be a witness unto you, for it has heard all the words of Jehovah which he spake unto us. It shall be therefore a witness unto you, lest ye deny your God. Okay, so we can see that what is happening here in Genesis 35 is a precursor to what will happen in Joshua, and actually what will happen repeatedly throughout the history of Israel. At various times, God will come to them and tell them, put away the strange gods. And we went to numerous scriptures. You can just review the last study and listen to it again. But we went to several scriptures where that call was made. But here in Genesis 35, after they give Jacob the strange gods and the earrings that were in their ears, Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. Okay, what's the significance of the oak tree? And the word oak used here, it's also used in verse 8 when Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak. And that's the word oak in English, but it's a different word in the Hebrew. In verse 8, the word oak is 437 in the concordance. It's a related word to the word used here in verse 4, which is Strong's number 424. And this word we would pronounce, or I would pronounce, as Elah. This word translated as oak, 424, Elah, and it's also translated as elm, the elm tree, and as the teal tree. So those three ways, and it does have the idea of a post, and it's related to a word that's translated as post, something that is sturdy, strong, but when we're looking for the spiritual meaning, actually we find that this word Elah has the same consonants as the Hebrew word that is Strong's number 426, and also would be pronounced as Elah. It has different vowel points, slightly different vowel points, but it's the same word. It's the same word. And this is the word from which we get that word in the Arabic world, Allah. Allah. The Strong's number 426 is Elah or Allah that is translated as God. It's the word used in Ezra. If we go to Ezra chapter 4 and verse 24, we read there, Then cease the work of the house of God. And this is the word Elah, which is at Jerusalem. And in Ezra 5, verse 1, Then the prophets, Haggai the prophet, and Zechariah the son of Iddo prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel. Again, same word. Verse 2, in the middle of the verse, began to build the house of God, same word, which is at Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God, same word, and several more times in this chapter. Elah is God. It's the word that is used in Daniel. If we go over to Daniel chapter 2 and many more times in Daniel, but I'll just read here from Daniel 2, starting in verse 18. that they would desire mercies of the God Elah of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God Elah of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God, Elah, forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. Very often, of course, this word is not used as often as El or Elohim. No, those words are used hundreds upon hundreds of times. This is used, much lesser than that, but it's still the name for God, the God of the Bible, and it has the same consonants, so it is the same word as oak that is found here, where they took the strange gods which were in their hand and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And I believe the spiritual significance would be that they are taking these blasphemous things, these evil things, these false gods, and they are hiding them, as it were, under the watchful gaze of God, under God's sight. And the Bible does tell us all things are naked and open unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. So they're putting them away and hiding them under the oak which was by Shechem. And when Joshua tells Israel of his day to do the very same thing, put away these strange gods, then he writes it in the book of the law, and he also puts it under the oak tree, and which was in Shechem. So the Lord is indicating, well, what is he indicating? What is meant by this of hiding the strange gods? Notice it does not say they destroyed them. And like Josiah, when he went about, he was destroying the idols that were in the land. But here they're putting them away, and so they're obedient to that command, the present command, put away the strange gods that are among you. And they gave Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, all their earrings in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. He didn't destroy them. He must have buried them. Even though the word buried isn't used here, it's the word hid. Now, when I first saw this and thought about it, I thought, well, they're putting away the strange gods in an attempt of obedient action to the command to be clean, change their garments, get rid of the sin out of their life. And so they turn them over and they have repented. They've turned from their sin. But there is a problem. There is a problem. When we look at the word hid in verse 4, it presents a problem to us. It's Strong's number 2934. It's found 31 times in the Old Testament. I thought that I expected when searching out that word, and sometimes you do have sort of a feel and expectation. Of course, we never allow our expectation to interfere with the results of our search. Impress our desire or expectation or what we thought was meant upon the Bible. No, we search, and in this case, I thought, well, this hiding of the strange gods will identify with God hiding sin, or and placing them under the oak, which the oak identifies with God. I expected to find the whole idea of sort of the blood sprinkled over the mercy seat with the law of God there, and man is under the law, and so the blood of Christ covers over the sins of those that he saved, and those sins are under the blood, was what I thought we would find, but it's not what I found. It's not, I would say, what the Bible is teaching by this word hid. Of the 31 times, I only found a couple of instances where the word hid is used, I would say, in a positive way. I'll just go to one of them, and it's also in the book of Joshua, Joshua 2, and in verse 6 we read of Rahab, the harlot, and it says there, "But she had brought them up to the roof of the house and hid them with the stalks of flax, which he had laid in order upon the roof." Now, one thing we see here, and it's referring to the spies who searched out Jericho, and so they would identify with God's people and the kingdom of God. So it was a good thing she hid them, protecting them. But one thing's clear, it was a temporary hiding place. That is, they did not remain hidden there. No, it was very, very short period of time. They came out of the hiding place and left the city to give their report. So even though this is positive, and one of the few instances where this word is used, we would say, in a positive way, it still has the idea of that which was hidden not remaining hidden. Now, if we look at some other scriptures, and also in Joshua chapter 7, and this is overwhelmingly how this word is used in a negative way. Joshua 7, starting in verse 20, so we see who's speaking. "And Achan answered Joshua and said, Indeed, I have sinned against Jehovah God of Israel, and thus have I done. When I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonian garment, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them, and took them, and behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran unto the tent, and behold, it was hid in his tent." And there again the word hid in his tent, and the silver under it. And this is what God says through Joshua troubled Israel. This coveting of these items, the gold, the silver, the Babylonian garment. And the Bible tells us to covet identifies with idolatry. And we read that in the New Testament in Colossians chapter 3, Colossians 3, verse 5. It says, "Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry." Idolatry. So Achan committed idolatry by coveting those items and hiding them. He was hiding his strange gods in his tent, in the earth in his tent. And that troubled Israel. The idols, or the things he coveted that were as idolatry, troubled Israel. And remember, Jacob said the very same thing of what his sons had done in regards to their lies to the men of Shechem in Genesis 34, verse 30. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "Ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land." And so he's trying to clean up the mess that his family has become, and he's going right to the source of the problem, the strange gods, but they're hiding them under the oak, just as Achan hid his idols of gold and silver and the Babylonian garment in the earth. Now, if it was just that, I wouldn't say this. This word is pointing to something negative, but it's much more than that. And let's read several more verses. Job 18, verse 5 tells us, "The wicked are in view, yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine." And then continuing to speak of the wicked, God says in verse 10, "The snare is laid." And the word laid is a translation of the same Hebrew word that's translated as hid. And of course, they hide the snare when they lay it in the ground. The snare is laid for him in the ground, and a trap for him in the way. This word translated as hid is used in relationship to snares multiple times. Psalm 9, we read in verse 15, "The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made, in the net which they hid is their own foot taken." They hid the net like a snare or a trap, and it catches themselves. In Psalm 35, verses 5 through 8, "Let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of Jehovah chase them." And so we know it's speaking of the wicked. "Let their way be dark and slippery, and let the angel of Jehovah persecute them. For without cause have they hid for me their net in a pit, which without cause they have digged for my soul. Let destruction come upon him at unawares, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself. Into that very destruction let him fall." And several more times it's used in relationship to snares. Well, what does this mean? We won't have time in this study. We've come to the end of our time. But Lord willing, when we get together in our next study, we're going to pick this up. We'll look at more Bible verses where this same word translated as hid is used. And then we'll go back to Genesis 35 and try to understand what's in view by the hiding of the strange gods. And yet, again, why wouldn't that be a good thing? Or what could be negative about that? So I hope you'll be able to join us then.
Thank you for joining us for eBible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies and information, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. Until our next Bible study, may the Lord's perfect will be done.